When Susan and Chris come, you can just make sure they got that. So. Okay. Well, it's good to be back tonight. We've been dealing with the area of transformation, and we're going to deal with the subject of the crowns and rewards. Transformation in the life of the believer will make a big difference at the judgment seat of Christ. We call it the Bema seat. I use that term many times, and I quit using that term Bema seat because in all, the Bema was where the judge would sit and observe the ones who were participating in a particular event. And from what I gather, and this is what I have learned, that when they would judge, it wasn't about who came in first and last, it was who followed the rules. You understand it. So with this being said, we're going to look at 1 Corinthians chapter 3, and I want to begin with verse number 5. Now, we will eventually get to our areas of the crowns, or what I call rewards, crowns and rewards. I will say this as we begin with this study, that, and I still believe this, that right things done the wrong way won't even be counted at the judgment seat. They must be done by the book. Let me give you an example. Going to church is a good thing. It's the right thing to do. Are you following me? That's just an example. I'll use this example. But outside a scriptural New Testament church, that's not counted at the judgment seat. You understand what I'm saying? It's the right thing, but it's done the wrong way. You get it? It's like, and I'll put this, and people debate with me on this. You know what my favorite game is? It's Monopoly. And what I'm going to say, a lot of people would think, well, that's just, it doesn't really matter. Well, to me, rules matter. You can play the whole game. And I like to follow the book, you know. And, of course, you know that thing where people will say you put the money in the middle, and that's what you've always heard. That's not the right way. As far as I'm concerned, that don't even count. But anyway. So we must be aware, and this is something that I would say the majority of Baptist preachers do not teach about the intricacy, and I don't know if that's the right word, but the details of the judgment seat of Christ. Now, Paul begins, let's begin with verse number 1, okay? He said, "And I, brethren, could not speak to you as unto spiritual, but as unto carnal." And by the way, that term carnal, they were acting like the lost in a church. They were real fleshly. He said, even as babies in Christ. They should have grown, but they didn't. And you can always tell, unless a brother and sister matures, they will always be going like they have always. You understand that. And a lot of church members act like a bunch of kids. If I don't get my way, I'm going to go somewhere else. We had the term, I'm going to take my dollies and go home. That's very immature. They have not grown past the stage of infancy, spiritual infancy. And Brother Joe has been in the ministry, put it this way, he's probably forgotten more than I'll ever learn. But he's seen a lot more than I've ever seen, and he's seen people like that. They just never grow up. Well, I'm saved. That has nothing to do with it. But Paul said this, I fed you with milk and not with meat. Now that's interesting. Milk is a baby's food. Meat is a mature food. My little grandson, Wyatt, you probably met him today. Sweet little, but you wouldn't want to give him a T-bone steak. He would choke on it. He's not ready for that. Now there's going to be one day where Papa's going to slip just a taste to him of what my wife made a key lime pie, and I'll slip a little bit in it. I won't do it now because his stomach won't be able to handle it. But there are a lot of believers who've been saved a long time, and they can't even handle God's word. They can't get past John 3:16. And this is what Paul said. And so if it would come back to him, they would say something like this: well, this church has been here a long time, and we and whatever it might be. And Paul said, for ye are not carnal. You're not carnal? For whereas there among you envyings and strife and divisions, are you not carnal and walk as men? I like the lost. Walk like, you see that term, walk as men. You're not walking spiritual, you're walking like the lost. For while one saith, I'm of Paul, another, I'm Apollos, are you not carnal? Did you know, and I had it here, Brother Joe, I had it here, and we had a couple, and I'll never forget this, led them to Christ. And I guess you may remember the couple, and I'm not going to say the name, but they used to sit right on this side over here, and they were coming all the time, man and woman. And you may have remembered when I was saying I was going to Christina Park in view of a call. You remember? Do you remember all that? And yeah, and I said that it may not be that God has called me. A view of a call is the church is God. That doesn't mean God is in it, but you never know until you go. And it was at the time when the church was really going through a lot of things. And when I came back, they were gone. And they did come back, and I was asking what was going on. Well, Pastor, we heard that you were leaving, and that happened to us before, and so we just didn't want to see it happen, so we found another church. That's babyish. You get what I'm saying? They should have stuck here, and I said, I'm not going. But this was the whole thing, and act like a bunch of little kids, and just because someone is saved does not mean they mature spiritually. No, that was not them. This was another group. Yeah, and I led both of them to Christ in the Bible study. Let me give you a footnote. I was getting a kickback because I didn't bring it for the church, and I said, well, Tuesday night we'll have a Bible study. Anybody would want, you remember that. I had people leave because of that. I didn't bring it for the church. Oh, yeah. Well, that's another example of if we don't do things by the P's and Q's, then we're going to get upset, we're going to leave. Now, if a pastor wants to have a Bible study and wants to have it on any other night than Sunday, you don't have to bring that up for church. That's extracurricular. Right. By the way, I'll tell you something else. You know there are people that leave because of the color of the toilet paper? You got to be crazy. Oh yeah. I'm just telling you that there are very carnal people, and there are people that have been, quote unquote, I would say this, saved for years and years and years, and anything will tick them off. I'm so glad we've come to the place that if we do things, there's certain things we just don't bring up for the, just like the map on the Sunday school wall. I didn't ask anybody, but it's beneficial. Now look what he said. He said, some say basically this, for while some saith, I'm of Paul, I'm a leader of Paul, I'm a follower of Paul, and then there's another that said, I'm a follower of Apollos. Verse number 4 of chapter 3 of 1 Corinthians. He said, one saith, I'm of Paul. I'm a fan of Paul. Do you understand? 1 Corinthians, not James, brother, but 1 Corinthians chapter 3. Now let's get that right here. That's James. That's not Corinthians. Okay, that's okay. Everybody watching, just play. I'll put this right here. We don't have the King technician with us tonight, but thank goodness we've got someone that's willing to do that. You get that? But that's a good one. James, a servant of God. By the way, that's a mature believer. A servant, that's doulos. That's a good, I'm glad you brought that. A servant of Christ. It didn't matter what people did and how they acted. He said, I'm a servant of Christ. That's not one of our verses, but that goes right along. So, yeah, there you go. Verse number 3. Are you not carnal? Now look at verse number 4. Let's move down to verse number 4. Thank you, brother, for your help in this. I'm going to tell you. And before people would laugh, they need to understand that job is not easy. No, I couldn't do it either. It's like a treasurer's job. I couldn't do that. Thank goodness that you stepped up the bat and said, I'll be a volunteer. I'll help any way I possibly can. So I thought I heard the door. I did? Okay. If you want to put one back there, then. So we ready? There you go. I'd like that. That's right, brother. Yeah. So I'm going to be on verse number 4. So the idea is this. Okay, there's there. Hey, Chris, we've got another copy of the paper right up here, brother. So when we get to verse number 4, he's explaining it. He said, "For while one saith, I'm a Paul," I'm kind of like this. They were preacher followers in that particular church, and there are still a lot of preacher followers. I would say this, and that's a sign of immaturity. Sooner or later, something's going to happen that I'm not going to be able to do this health-wise. You know, it's just, and I prepare myself for that. I don't know what tomorrow's going to hold. I really don't. But sooner or later, my body is going to give out. I'm not going to be able to do it. It may happen before Brother Joe. And then there would be people that, because they've called someone else, they would have a hard time accepting a new pastor. And I'm going to give you a footnote. If my time is over, and I wouldn't want anybody to think any less of me, and this is my practice, brother, and I would say this to any preacher that's been in church a long time. If God is done with that individual, he needs to move on, because guess what people will do? They will stay with that older pastor without beginning to accept the new pastor. And I'll say this, for most times, the pastor's always an outsider. Now look at this next thing. Look at the next question. Verse number 5. Who then is Paul? Well, who is Paul? He's a servant of Christ. And who is Apollos? But ministers by whom ye believed. In other words, whether it was Paul or whether it was Apollos, these individuals were leading people to Christ. And I'll say this right here. If it came to the place to whether it was, I'll say this. If it was the place where Chris led someone to Christ, or you led someone to Christ, or your grandson led someone to Christ, or even you, that doesn't make me to the place where I get pouty about it. That means that God has used you. And by the way, so the question is who is Apollos? Who is Paul? These were ministers by whom you believed, even as the Lord gave to every man. I'm in the position as I am as a pastor because God gave me that gift. And I'm going to give you another thing. Whether it's me as a gift or what your grandson and Grant is what he's doing, just because I am a pastor doesn't make me any better than Grant. It's just another gift he's given. And by the way, Grant, what you're learning, I could never do that. And Grant's thinking, oh, yeah, you could. No, I'll tell you. It's like I couldn't do what your wife is doing, the piano. I don't read music. Well, you sing it. Well, that don't mean I can read it. I hope you understand. But Paul is saying that these individuals are ministers, or they're tools to get the work done. Now look at the next thing. So Paul says in verse number 6, I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the increase. He's by the way, he's the one. I can preach the word. Somebody can water it, but God is the one who's got the increase. Now here's another one. So then, neither is he that planteth anything, neither is he that watereth anything, but it's God that giveth the increase. You get it? I'm no more special than anybody else. We are all important. We're all in this together. You get it? And so when people, and in the years, Susan, you've been here, you've seen people act like little kids. If they don't get their way, they just leave. And that's what he's talking about. Aren't you acting kind of carnal? By the way, I'm going to give you a footnote. The attitude we have here now is going to make a big difference at the judgment seat. And we'll get to that. Now, verse number 6. Now, he that planteth and he that watereth are one. That's the ministries that are in there. And every man shall receive his own reward. And I'll give you a footnote on that. That word reward is also the word crown. He'll get a crown according to his own labor. I'm not going to get a reward off of Chris, what Chris does. See, Jesus said this: before you start pulling the splinter out of your eye, out of somebody else's eye, you better start pulling the beam out of your own eye. Before you start saying, I'm going to get a crown because someone else is doing, I will give you give you something to think about. But did you know that down the line, that because you did what Christ would have you to do, that you will get not rewards, but you'll get residuals because of that? Not because you're not doing that, but it's kind of like you get these things about the in the mail about insurance policies for your grandkids or whatever. You seen those little mail things? It's nothing anything they did, but you invested in that, and the grandkids get a. But look at this next thing. Verse number 9. For we are laborers together with God. And this is written to a scriptural New Testament church. We're laborers together. We're laborers together. I'll say it again. We are laborers together with God. Ye are God's husbandry, and you're God's building. That word husbandry is the word that basically we're stewards. We're the ones that take care of God's work, and then we are part of God's house. That's how that works. Now look at the next one. According to the grace of God which is given to me, and this is Paul, as a wise master builder, I laid the foundation. Do you know that's what I'm doing here? And by the way, I don't know about anybody else, but in certain occupations, they have to keep up with how the laws work. As the times go on, they have to do whatever the laws are stating how they're doing. They change all the time. In this area right here, I would be kind of like Paul. I'm laying a foundation. I'm giving you this information, and another buildeth thereon. I lay the foundation, you build upon it. But look at this. But let every man take heed how he buildeth thereupon. It goes with and it's interesting when we deal with it. There is a law of sowing and reaping. But look at this right here. For other foundation can no man lay than is laid, which is Christ Jesus. I said this before, and at the top of your page, right things done the wrong way won't even be counted at judgment seat. Only what we do for Christ by the book is what only counts. You see that? We're going to get to this in a little bit more in depth. Now, if any man build upon this foundation, that foundation Christ, gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, and stubble. All those things here. In other words, if any man, that's what he's going to build on. Did you notice from the first one mentioned down to the last, the most precious down to the most worthless, the worthless. Gold has more value than stubble. I'm going to put it this way right here. We used to have, and these are memories. I don't know if Grant you probably wouldn't even relate to this. When I grew up, we used to have burn barrels. Do you know what I'm talking about? Burn barrels. It was 50-gallon drum. You take your garbage out there, and you take bags of it, and it looks like there was a lot of stuff in there. And of course, by our standards, yeah, you could put cans and bottles and paper and you could put all these things in there and some plastics, and you put it in this 50-gallon drum. Brother Joe knows what I'm talking about. And you would burn it, And when it finally got to the end, the only thing that fire would not burn is what you saw. Usually it was cans and bottles. And then you didn't have so much. Well, when you deal with this, every man's work is going to be made manifest. And the only thing that's going to really make a difference is those things that have value. Now look at this right here. Every man's work shall be made manifest. It's kind of like the burn barrel. What really the fire can't touch, that's what you see. And the thing about ashes is this, that once that fire hits it, I'll put it this way. I had Michael and Sam want to know if they could burn some boxes at the house. I said, sure. The box, big old giant things. Guess what they look like now? And if you step on it, it's just nothing but dust. It looked big, but it's nothing to it. And I'll tell you that in those boxes, especially that big one, in the corners they would have staples. You know what I'm talking about? The big box staples. Well, did you know if you got searching in the ashes, guess what? The only thing will be in there. Those. You see where we're going with this. So he said, every man's work shall be made manifest, for the day shall declare it. And that day is, we're talking about the judgment seat of Christ, because it shall be revealed by fire. And the fire shall try every man's work of what sort it is. If any man's work abide, which he hath built thereupon, he shall what? Receive a reward. And I'm going to put this, there's 4 of these that I'm dealing with that you find the crowns for. Well, I'll put it this way right here, and Brother Joe knows exactly what I'm talking about. People assume too much before the judgment seat. Look what he, in fact, we'll deal with this just a minute. But he said, if any man's work shall be burned, he shall suffer. But look at the interesting thing about it. Shall be burned, he shall suffer loss. But he himself shall be what? As by what? As by fire. You know what that means? Some people, that the only thing they got to show for them at the judgment seat is this, that they were saved, nothing else. That's a sad state of affairs. Nothing to show the years that they were saved. Now, I guess the next saddest part, and it'd be wonderful to see Christ, but to have nothing to show for the years that you were saved, that's going to be sad. And by the way, when we get to heaven, all tears are going to be wiped away. That's not what it says. You're going to find that out at the end of the book. And that's at the new heavens and new earth. My personal opinion, this is Bernieology, it's going to be a wonderful thing, and it'll be like the tears of joy, but then there's going to be tears of sadness knowing we wasted our lives. I hope you understand that we need to get the mentality. See, Paul had what we would call an imminent mentality, so what he did was very important. Now look at the next thing. Know ye not that you're the temple of God, and the Spirit of God dwelleth in you? If any man defile the temple of God, he shall destroy the temple of God which is holy, the temple ye are. Now, with that being said, I want us to go to the book of, and it's on your paper, but look at 2 John, and look at 2 John 1:8. I preached this one time, and one of my problem individuals disagreed with me. It's on the top of your paper, so 2 John 1:8. Did you know rewards, crowns can be lost? Are y'all aware of that? You go, this aspect right here, work hard and get nothing. What do you think happens when individuals, they're faithful for years and years, and all of a sudden something happens and they give up? People got to be crazy to think they're going to get a reward for it. Rewards are for faithful service. But look 2 John 1:8. Look to yourselves. I like how he starts that. Look to yourself. I don't look at Brother Joe. I don't look at Grant. I don't look at Katie, Susan, or Chris. but look at myself. He said that we lose not those things which we have wrought, but we receive a what? That's rewards, crowns. See, rewards are given based solely upon one's personal work of faithfulness. I know that's not on there in the time. I didn't have the time to put all this, and we hopefully will get where I can get this. But always keep in mind that the rewards are based solely upon one's personal work of faithfulness. So my concern, and by the way, I am to be concerned of the faithfulness of the church. But I'm not to be more concerned what you do over what I'm to be doing. You understand what I'm saying? I used to, in fact, when Gerald was our music director, we've had some good music directors. And I remember Gerald, and I would look around and I said, Gerald, where is everybody? He said, don't worry about where everybody is. We're here. I think y'all told me that before. And I had to get out of the mindset. It's not about, yeah, I'll be concerned when people are not here, but I need to be focused that I'm here and I'm doing what God wants me to do. And we just read that one may lose his rewards. I didn't make that up. I had an individual tell me that you know, you couldn't lose your rewards. And I said, pardon me? Excuse me? But did you know that when I look at this, and we've been talking about the judgment seat of Christ, we need to be aware of this, that there are two classes of saved people that shall appear at the judgment seat of Christ. We shall all stand at the judgment seat. There's going to be two classes of saved individual. Number one will be the class that will have works that abide, built upon satisfied service to Christ according to His Word. Now, if you need me to say that, that's one class, brother. I said this, we're all in this together, right? And I'm not concerned with what Stone River Baptist Church is doing. They'll have to deal with that. I will say this, that if the preacher's not preaching on these principles I'm dealing with, he'll have to give an account of that. See, we'll have to be given account of whatever we do. That's one class. It's a class that have works that abide. You could put that. And they're built upon their faithful service to Jesus Christ. Then you have another class that were not satisfied doing whatever they were supposed to be doing according to His Word. They're going to suffer loss. They won't lose their salvation. You won't lose your salvation at the judgment seat no more than you can lose your salvation if you backslide. And I will state this till death comes, that you cannot lose your salvation. The only thing you can lose as a believer is you can lose rewards. We need to be aware of it. And it's interesting that there are more churches that push so much about losing your salvation, they're not even mentioning about losing rewards. That's a sad commentary to any church that would preach that. But the more one labors in keeping with the teachings and doctrines of Scripture, the greater his rewards. But now we need to keep in mind that I found 4 different crowns. So there are going to be crowns that faithful pastors will receive that the regular member won't receive. That's not bad, because there will be those rewards. So first of all, it's the crown of life. Now, I did not say the book of life. There's a whole different thing. I'm finding out something. And again, we need to understand the context of what we read. The book of life and the crown of life are 2 different things, and the crown of life has nothing to do with salvation. I never heard that before. Well, the reason is maybe we haven't studied enough. There were things, I remember years ago, And I was talking to Brother Lanier, and he could talk to me about things. He said, there's things I haven't really brought. He said, because people would not even get it. Not only would they not get it, they would think I'd be a nutball. There's things that he began, and I began to start wondering, where's the guy coming from? But we need to look at this, the crown of life. I didn't say the book of life. I didn't say anything about salvation. But the crown of life, or what I put, life crown, James chapter 1, verse number 12, deals with this. And he said this, blessed is the man that endureth temptation. When I talk about temptation, anything that'll get you to quit. Did you know you receive a reward for not quitting and a crown for not quitting? It's hard to kick against the pricks. It's hard to keep going when things seem like you're being pushed against. But he said, blessed is the man that endureth temptation, for when he is tried, he shall receive the crown of life, which the Lord hath promised to them that love him. That term, love, and it's interesting. If I love Christ, I'm not going to give up when things get... But see, we have to be aware of something. Loving Christ is no guarantee that the world is going to hate you. But that crown of life is given those who keep on going despite temptation. And Brother Joe is back there. And Brother Joe, have you ever been tempted to quit before? Just how many times have you ever retired?
I had a nickel for every time
Do you think that as a pastor, I've been here about, 2006. I've been here 14 years, soon be 15. Do you think I've ever quit before? In my mind, I've quit. Why? Just give me some examples from your point of view, because I know why. If you were going to quit in my position and things that you've probably seen, what would the reasons be? Huh? Nope. When the numbers drop. Say what, brother? Yeah. I'll be honest with you, when you get, and I'm not, Brother Joe's going to laugh. When you start getting into your 60s and closer to 70s, if you're not careful, you start wondering, what's it all about? But I'll tell you some other times, and when we had that big to-do year, yeah, there's a lot of things, and that was temptation to stop. But you know why I'm still here? The main reason I'm still here, number one is I love Christ. I have to keep in mind whether I feel down, that I believe that what I have done so far has made a difference. See, I also believe this, that whether a church has 3,000, 300, 30, or even 3, those 3 need the word just like 3,000. And they need the encouragement like 3,000. But in this area here, did you know it's not only a crown for a pastor, this life crown, but did you know that it's a life crown that's given to anybody that just keeps on keeping on no matter how hard it gets? In that verse, James 1:12, blessed is the man that endureth temptation. I'm going to tell you, not only temptation with the area of quitting, but temptation to get him to be carnal. For when he's tried, I said this before, and we need to be aware of this, and I said this, you never enjoy the mountaintops until you're in the valleys. By the way, as a pastor, when a pastor feels alone, he's never alone. Never alone. Look at the next thing. In 1 Peter chapter 5, verse number 2 through 4, there's a crown of glory that's given to pastors for feeding the flock. And it's on your paper too, so Katie said, I just want to be sure. That's okay. This is a glory crown. This is a glory crown. And Peter said, feed the flock of God, which is among you, taking oversight thereof. Not by constraint, not because you have to. I'm not to do this because I have to, but willingly, not for filthy lucre, not because I'm trying to get something from someone. It's nothing wrong. In fact, I believe a church ought to take care of a pastor, and I'm not saying that from my position. But I think a church ought to take care of the pastor as she can. You follow me? And I think that every man that goes into the ministry ought to keep his mindset that when he says, and brother, this is my pet peeve. When you hear people talk about going into ministry, the idea is, can they take care of me? I'm going to give you a clue, and I'm going to give you this answer here. If God sends a man to a particular ministry, God will provide a way of taking care of that man, even if that preacher needs to get off of his rump and find a secular job. I believe that. I think that in many cases, Brother, I've heard this. There's a sad commentary when you get people going to ministry, and by the way, it would be good to have housewives that don't have to work. That's a good thing, but that's not always possible. But feed the flock of God which is among you, taking oversight thereof, not by constraint, but willing, not for filthy lucre, but of a ready mind. Neither being lords over God's heritage. You know the Lord is to be the big man on campus. But examples to the flock. I like that, being examples to the flock. If I give up, what's that showing to the group? One wants them to give up. If I complain all the time, guess what they're going to do? They're going to complain all the time. And I'm going to put it this way right here. If you start preaching to people that boy, you be faithful to God, He's going to make you a millionaire, they start thinking that way. But an example to the flock. And I would say this, and put it this way right here. As a pastor, you need to be aware of this. You can come to me with many things, but there's not always I can come to you about something. But if I come to you about, sometimes what pastors need is a pat on the back. You understand that? Sometimes you get that place to where pastors just need to say, no, and I know this from you, I'm not complaining, but sometimes pastors just need to know that, hey, the church appreciates it. I know y'all do. I know you do, and I appreciate y'all for that. But most of all, I am to be an example to you. Now notice this. And when the chief shepherd shall appear, ye shall receive a crown of glory that fadeth not away. You see what's important there? And by the way, before I go any further, that crowns are not the reason why we do what we do. Crowns are the reward for what we do. I'm not doing this to receive a reward. I'm doing this because I love Him. The result is well done. Now, here's something else. The righteous crown. That's number 3. This is given to those who love Christ appearing. And by the way, I'm going to give you a footnote. If I really love His appearing or look for His appearing, loving His appearing and looking for His appearing, guess what I'm going to be doing? Now, Katie's thinking, okay, I'll put it this in the simple terms. As a parent, and let me use this. If you were my children, and I'm going to put this. If Chris was my son, oh Lord, oh help me. Chris is saying, yeah, you think so. But you're going to play my son, brother. And I tell Chris, I'm going to go to work. Now, I might get home early. I'm not sure. I might just whatever. But Chris, before I come home, I want you to mow the yard. I love you, Dad. I'll see you when you get home. Now, I didn't state when I was going to get home. Maybe I needed to go to the office and pick up something and come back. Now, if Chris really loved me, guess what he would do as soon as I said that? Get right on it. Well, Chris didn't want to mow the yard, so he's going to make me happy by washing the windows. That's either, or washing the car. Or dusting the TV, or whatever it might be. Does that show that Chris really loved me as a father? No. He found something else to do, but that's not what I asked him to do. In this area right here, notice what Paul told Timothy. He said, I fought a good fight. I fought. I finished my course. That's something interesting. I finished the course. By the way, my course is not the same as your course. My course is not the same as your course, Brother Joe, or Grant's course, or Chris's, or Susan. God has given each believer a course to follow. Some of it is harder than others, but keep in mind, whatever course is given you, it's not impossible to follow that course. In fact, whatever He's given you to do, you may have more ups and downs than I do, but that doesn't mean that it's impossible. But He said, I fought a good fight, I finished my course, I kept the faith. Henceforth, or because I did that, there is laid up a crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, shall give me at that day, and not to me only, but unto all them also that do what? Love His appearing. If I love His appearing, or look for His return. By the way, I'm going to say this again. Paul wrote this as an individual that had an imminent mentality. At any time he could see the Lord. Clyde Lanier used to say this, we need to have the mentality that Christ died this morning, He rose this evening, and He's coming back in the morning. See how that works? Imminent mentality that any time, and I'm going to give you a footnote, at any time we could see the Lord. Anytime. We believe in the trumpet sounding, don't we? We believe at death we're going to see how many believe this? That when death finally comes, we're going to see the Lord. When is death promised that it'll happen? We don't know. But in this mentality, all them also that love His appearing. Paul was looking in the aspect of this. You get what I'm saying? In this. His appearing. Not death, but Paul had this area here. He also, oh death, where's thy sting? Oh grave, where's thy victory? He had a mentality that even that be absent from the body, be present with the Lord. This area here is, but all them that love His appearing. So when you hear people talk about this, that I can't wait to see the Lord, well, do they? If they can't wait to see the Lord, guess what they're going to be doing? They're going to be fighting to the finish. Then the fourth one, and we've got time to do the fourth one, is the incorruptible crown. This is a crown that, by the way, this is interesting. Did you know that, and this is one of the hardest, I guess. Because it's hard to take care of our bodies like we should. Are you following me? Who does this body belong to? You think it belongs to you? No. I don't take care. I eat a lot of stuff I shouldn't be eating. How many agree with that? You get it? But did you know that that there's a crown for those who keep their body under subjection? You ever heard that, Brother Joe? There's a reward for those who keep. See, my body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. We ought to take care of our bodies better than we do this building. See, because when we leave this building, guess where the Holy Spirit is? He's gone out with us, you know. When we leave this place, it's just an empty shell. That ain't the case with us. But Paul said this, and every man that striveth for the mastery is temperate in all things. You know what the striveth for the man? You want to get a reward. He's going to be temperate in everything. Now they that do it to obtain a corruptible crown. There's a lot of things people do. They don't care. They don't care about taking care of their body. They don't care about what they do. It's just, and they want a crown, but it's not going to. I said this before. If whatever you do to satisfy you, that crown's not going to last. And I'm going to tell you this, that you ever heard of Christian braggers? You ever heard of that, Brother Joe? Christian braggers? Look at me and, huh? Yeah, they just, by the way, they already received their reward. Look at what I did. And they'll get their recognition for a little bit of time. And when I say a little bit of time, they got the recognition while they're living. But guess what? When they die, that recognition's dead. My prayer is that we never get to the place where we bring attention to ourselves because we're doing this. Well, look at us. We're reaching. How many countries, brother, have we reached through this? No telling.
Upwards to 30 or more.
30 or more. And it's my heart's desire that we don't ever get to this place because we reach 30 people that we start bragging about it. Because once that happens, we've done God our reward when people say, oh, good job. And that dies whenever we leave. Are you following me? Well, you know, I'm going to tell you. Years ago, I had a missions director. I'm not going to say any names, brother. Brother Joe, and of course the individual, he's gone now. But every time he would get around, we would have the missions conference, and I don't know if you noticed this. Boy, we support so many missionaries. We've given that, this little church has given so much. He's already gotten that reward, and if the church based on it, they've done got that reward as well, right then. And it's nothing, there's nothing wrong with saying we have been able to do that as God has led through us. And God is the one who gets the glory. It's nothing that we've done. It's the same thing here. When we started this, brother, and I'm still astounded that this little church is able to, and I'm not bragging on this because it's not us that's doing this. It's God using us. And after Brother Joe and myself have gone, my desire is to see this keep going. See, you see Grant sitting back there, and you know what we're doing? We are priming him to take over. You may not realize this. I said this, and it's interesting. Life goes by real quickly. I'm just kind of rambling, but I'm not. We had the family over at the house. Had a whole house full of it. And I remember when we would have these reunions, and my father-in-law was the grandpa. You know, following that? Guess what? I'm not kidding. My wife, Tawana's brother, is younger than I am. So when I'm holding the baby here, and I see all my little bookies running around. And then I have my son and my daughter and my son and my daughter-in-law and all these around here. Then guess what? I am Grandpa Walton. And did you know it just seemed like it was just not too long ago when Melvin Altman, Tawana's daddy, was in that same position I was. And it's not about all me, it's about the influence I've had on the family. It's the same thing here. This is not about me, that's not about Brother Joe, that's not about this. It's about the influence we have on those to whom we reach. And by the way, who knows how many people, if one person gets saved out of 100, boy, that's been marvelous. So it's not about what we do. This incorruptible crown, I keep my body in subjection. There's a lot to do with that. In subjection to who? Jesus Christ. You get what I'm saying? We're bought with a price. We don't belong to our own. You don't own you. And I thought about that. That I'm to be subjected to Jesus Christ. I heard this. How many remember this when it went around? WWJD. What would Jesus do? Look in the Bible, find out. The question is, what would he approve? You get it? It's not about what Jesus would do. What would Jesus do in that case? Well, what would he want me to do? I know what he would do. And by the way, but what would he want me to do with my body, my influence? Look at this. Lest by any means when I preach to others, or when I talk to others, I myself shall be a castaway. Do you know that actions speak louder than words? It's like this. Pious believers get the idea of telling you what you shouldn't do. I had this, and I'm of the type, I'm very careful about how I win others to Christ. We had the church in Oxford, Florida. Brother, you know which church I'm about, Pleasant Grove Baptist Church. Been there a long time. And we had a young lady and her fiance, might have been her boyfriend at that time. They weren't living together, but I remember that it was a member of the family, which was Gwen's, I believe it was Gwen's mother had passed away. And so I began to minister to the family. And a result of me ministering to that family, pretty soon the daughter was coming and her boyfriend would come to church. Well, you can't expect a person that hadn't been in church to dress like a believer. You can't expect that. So I remember, and this young lady was coming in, but she had her dress was short. I'm not talking about way up to her, her hind end, but they were above the knees. And I had one of the deacons at the church come up to me and said, "Preacher, you need to talk to her about her dress." Do you know what would have happened if I came down on her about her dress? She would never come back. And I told that deacon, I said, if you would pay more attention to what I'm preaching about instead of looking at this young girl's legs, you could get something out of it. I never did come down on her about that. But did you know her and her boyfriend eventually got saved? I got a chance to marry him. And guess what she's doing now? She's a treasurer of that church, and he's a deacon in that church. But did you know if I started getting down on her about how she dressed, and I wasn't taking care of being subjected to Christ, then what I would preach about would be completely useless. You know that word castaway? You know what that word castaway, you can write this on your notes. It's the same word we use called a crackpot. I think if you check that out. Have you heard that before? You know what a crackpot is? That don't mean somebody crazy. It's not saying he's a crackpot. That means this. We'll use this as an example. We're coming to the close right here. But a crackpot is a bowl or a vase or something that has a crack in it. It's totally useless. We had, and I said this at home, and this is kind of as a, what I would call a review. But at our house, Chris has probably seen it. It's like a big old black witch's cauldron. At our house, the backyard is a big old iron kettle. If you have it, it's probably about that big around. It's made out of iron. And before, in fact, for years and years, I would see that in the yard, Tawana's yard. And it was sitting there, and it's more of a planter than it was what it was intended for. Years ago, they would cook Perlo in there. You know what Perlo is? Chicken and rice in the iron kettle. There you go. That's a southern thing. But because it got cracks in it, they had to drill holes in the bottom as a planter. It was completely useless for its internal. If I don't keep myself in subjection, then what happens when I preach to others? What I say is completely useless. So I must keep my body in subjection. Judgment seat of Christ, the crown of righteousness. By the way, righteousness there is God's standard, not my standard. My lifestyle should be on God's standard, not my standard. God's good, isn't He? All the time. Let's have a word of prayer and then we'll be dismissed. Father, we